What is happening, Lunchmates? Alec here, hosting for today's episode. Don't worry, I know what you're all thinking. You missed me, right? Of course you did. Okay,
I did.
welcome.
We always do.
Hey, come on, boys, let's
And
go.
do we
Let's go.
really?
Hey, Sinric.
I
Welcome
think
back.
Daniel's the best host.
No one said that.
Yeah.
I love this.
What you just
Welcome
heard was a pre-edited in conversation where Daniel upholds himself.
Should I start over or?
No, that's fine.
Keep going.
Okay. Welcome back to another episode of the Boys Lunch Table Podcast. This being our third episode of this season, so if you haven't already and are interested, be sure to check back on our previous releases. My dudes, how you all doing?
Great.
Good.
man.
Good.
Nice.
Good, I'm good.
Good. So, surprise, if you didn't read the title, today we are going to be counting down the top 10 Zelda games of all time. Now, before we get into this, I just want to say no list is perfect. All throughout the internet, or at least from what I could find, lists seem to be different all across the board, with different games of the franchise appearing or not appearing depending on the list and, company. We've taken into account the popularity and our own personal interest and insight into making this top 10. So stick around as each top 10 will be discussing what each title brought to the franchise and our own personal interest into why it stands out so much and deserves its moment in the Zelda spotlight. So without further ado, here is the TLT original top 10 Zelda games of all time.
10. The Legend of Zelda, Phantom Hourglass. All of you guys probably know what Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, but if you don't know, the game was released June 23rd, 2007 for the Nintendo DS and surprisingly, the Wii U. And for a quick plot summary, it takes place sometime after Wind Waker, and Phantom Hourglass opens up with Tetra and a pirate crew hunting down or tracking down a ghost ship after they heard some claims about it. Tetra hops on, goes missing, Link follows suit, gets knocked off, hops in the ocean, gets lost, and then he finds a fairy and another pirate, and they go on an adventure trying to find Tetra again. It's a pretty simple game. I personally like it. Some new features added to the game was sailing. If you like the sailing in Wind Waker, you're gonna like it in Phantom Hourglass. My favorite part of the game is the fact that Zelda, or is it Zelda?
That's right.
Or
Yeah.
Tetra, during the dungeon, you could take over some of the guards in a dungeon, and then use that to work your way around the dungeon, help you complete puzzles, help you take out enemies. It's pretty cool. I like that. And with the Phantom Hourglass, you have a whole timer behind it. So I think it's kind of cool to have to run in, run out, buy your time, be pretty strategic with it. I think it's pretty nice with it.
Nice.
Number 9, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. Now this game is a direct sequel to Phantom Hourglass, coming out December 7th, 2009 for the DS and the Wii U. Now the game takes place 100 years after Phantom Hourglass, as Tetra creates the Hyrule Kingdom. A lot of things happen. Zelda gets kidnapped. Somehow her spirit gets separated from her body and then follows Link around. That's besides the point. Link is an engineer. He's a train engineer. He somehow gave up the life of being a knight and chose to just fix trains for a living.
Better money.
anyway.
Better money. Better money, lower risk.
Passions.
Yeah, and then lower risk.
But anyway, they go around. You go on the game collecting rail maps with the youth to reform or regenerate their spirit tracks as they were destroyed during the beginning of the game from the main villain. A new feature added to the game, a part different from the sailing, similar to the sailing from Phantom Hourglass. You have a train, which helps you cruise around the map and go from one place to another. I think it's a kind of a downgrade because the boat had a more freedom as you can map your way around how you want to get from place to place, and the train is pretty. How you say?
One direction.
Linear.
Linear.
You're more confined with wherever the tracks lead you to go, and that's about it. So there we go. Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks.
Nice.
Number 8, Legend of Zelda 4 Swords. So this game is a multiplayer game. Well, it can be a multiplayer game. So it originally came out on the GameCube as well as the Game Boy Advance, which was paired with A Link to the Past, which is also on this list. Basically, what happens in the game is Link approaches a shrine to check on the seal. Well, suddenly a dark figure grabs Princess Zelda, and the seal basically was where Vati had been weakened, and he was inside the seal. And basically, he manages to break out of the prison within the Four Sword, and he still has no memory of the princess and saw only a fair maiden. He decided that she was to become his bride, and to commemorate his return, and took her off to his palace. After being instructed by fairies, Link takes the Four Sword from its pedestal and is split into four, as the legend foretold. The great fairies could help Link to get the Palace of Winds, but not until he proved himself courageous enough. After traveling over 3 different lands and the dungeons they contained, Link and his 3 other selves confronted the Wind Mage in the Palace of Winds, the seat of Vati's power. After a battle between the sorcerer and the heroes, Link was able to reseal the Vati into the Four Sword Blade. So, this is a different take on the Zelda game. The part where the Four Swords basically...
It's only 4-player Zelda game, isn't it?
To my knowledge, it is, yeah. I think there is a one that Daniel mentioned outside of the recording with 3, but I don't know if they're playable or not.
That
But yeah.
one is still a single player game.
Yeah. But basically, yeah, like I remember I had this and the Link to the Past basically for your Game Boy Advance. With Game Boy, it's kind of a tougher to play Four Swords because you need to have 3 other people with Game Boys and the game in order to play it, plus the cable links. But I did see gameplay, and even Kalichi's had the game too for GameCube though, so that's pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you, Virgin. Real fun.
Nice,
If you have 4 people.
I used to play Four Swords. It was one of my favorite Zelda games growing up, but I never actually ended up finishing it. I loved it, but I just didn't end up finishing it.
True.
Like any game, you know, where Link gets to wear a different color. And that brings me to number 7, a game where he doesn't get to wear another color. Skyward Sword.
Love the transition.
So in this game, it's actually the very first in the very complicated Zelda timeline, where we have Link, who's a student at the Knight Academy, who he and Zelda go flying one day after a wing ceremony, and she gets dropped onto the surface. Need I mention that the Hyruleans are living in the sky on a rock? That's always fun. So I feel like this game gets knocked a little bit. Its art style kind of draws the line between like the toon style of like Wind Waker and like the more realistic style of like Twilight Princess. But honestly, I think one of the bigger problems that people have with it is that this was the first time where we had one-to-one sword movement using the Wii Motion Plus. Now this was 2011, and you know, it was for the Wii, so I feel like they were just trying something. A lot of people liked it, a lot of people didn't. Personally, I thought it was fine. I thought that maybe it wasn't strong enough of a title to be called the first game in the Legend of Zelda series, but you know, ultimately I thought it was really cool how they tried to let you feel like you're actually moving the sword. In the final boss Demise, that it was really cool to learn that Ganondorf was, you know, descended from a god, basically.
Oh yeah.
For real?
Yeah,
Man.
In fact, so is Zelda is the embodiment of the goddess, and Link is just a dopey looking guy.
And a train conductor.
Yeah, he becomes a train conductor
Dude,
too.
man of many professions here, I'm telling you.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. Should name the Legend of Zelda featuring Jack, the hero of time.
What?
I can just imagine just like a poor man's like looking Link, where it's just like has raggedy like green tunics, and he's like his sword is like really small and kind of like rusted, and he's just like
with a sword on
It's just a wooden sword. It's just like, hey, I'm Jack. I'm here to save the princess.
He has a bunch of stains on his shirt.
Yeah, it's got like the what are the chickens called? Like the cuckoos or whatever they're called, or
Yeah.
yeah. He's just got like their egg like splattered on his face. It's like I'm fine. It's just protein. You know what I mean?
I mean, in Phantom Hourglass, there's a discount Link in that game, like a with real Link as well. You have to like go fight him.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Oh my gosh, guys, everyone pay their
I don't
respect for
remember
this. It's everyone pay their respect for discount Link. Nice.
Number 6, Zelda, Link to the Past. So, Zelda: A Link to the Past is one of my favorite and first Zelda game I've ever played. It was fully released worldwide in 1992 and is a single-player game with a lot of story and nice diverse map. It was sold as one of the best-selling SNES games worldwide and was remade for the Game Boy Advance, DS, and surprisingly, the PSP. However, you can still play this game through Nintendo's Virtual Consoles. Upon the release of the game, it was praised for its amazing graphics and gameplay and was awarded as IGN's second best game of all time. The Link to the Past name was also commonly thrown in with other very high-tier SNES games like Super Metroid and Chrono Trigger. Zelda: A Link to the Past is a prequel before the OG's Legend of Zelda, and this game was a big advancement from it, with being a bigger and overall better game. But let us dive deep into this game now, as the story is a lot more elaborate than most Zelda titles, but not only in the game. You see, in the original A Link to the Past game for the SNES, it has some backstory in the game manual itself. It basically talks about the creation of Hyrule, and talks about how the gods created the Triforce, also known as the Master Force. Many wanted the power of the Triforce, but no one knew where it was, and it turned for a lust for power where blood had been spilled. However, a gang of thieves skilled in black art stumbled upon the gates of the Golden Land. They saw the Triforce from afar and fought their way into the Golden Land. After killing his own followers, the leader grasped the Triforce with his blood-stained hands, and his name was Ganon. After gaining the power of the Triforce, Ganon caused disaster to set foot on Hyrule and was torturing it. To counter this, the Lord of Hyrule sent for the 7 wise men and knights of Hyrule to seal the Golden Land. To counter the magic that was being sent out by the Triforce, the people of Hyrule forged the Master Sword, which was resistant and could even counter the Triforce. It could only be wielded by someone who has pure heart and a strong body. And at the end of the 7 wise men were able to seal the gates of the Golden Land, as the Hyrule Knights mainly died due to the tanking the damage of Ganon and his army. So that was just the game manual. So now for the actual story.
Oh man.
So basically, you awake by hearing Zelda telling Link telepathically that she is being held captive in the dungeon of the castle, and that a man named Aghanim has taken control of the castle and is trying to open the seal that the 7 wise men created, and begs for Link to rescue her. You then see your uncle and the family sword and shield in hand, going out, and he tells you not to leave the house and that he'll be back in the morning. After he leaves, Link makes his way to the castle during a stormy night, and Zelda reveals telepathically that there's a secret entrance to the castle. As you travel down the secret passage, you see Uncle Ben, your uncle, severely hurt. Yeah. Severely hurt. With his last breath, he tells Link to wield the sword and shield to save Zelda. Link then goes to the dungeon, battling brainwashed soldiers, and rescues Zelda and brings her to the sanctuary where she is kept safe. But Link's job is not done yet. The sage there, keeping Zelda safe, tells Link to seek the village elder, who was one of the descendants of the 7 wise men, in order to stop Aghanim. He later finds out, in order to beat him, he'll need the Master Sword. And basically, in order to get the Master Sword, you need the 3 pendants, which are the Pendant of Courage, Pendant of Power, and Pendant of Wisdom. So after getting the first 2 pendants, Link then goes to Death Mountain, gets the Moon Pearl, which is very important to the story, as it helps him keep him in human form during the Dark World. And yeah, he grabs the last pendant. He then gets the Master Sword from the Lost Woods, and then as soon as he gets the Master Sword and is able to take down Aghanim, basically Zelda gets captured again, and yeah, so he has to go save her again.
Oh my gosh, Zelda, come on, man. Girl? What?
All she knows how to do is get captured.
we have strong Zeldas in the Zelda timeline. This one just ain't it, you know?
Yeah,
Wasn't her time in the spotlight, you know?
So basically, yeah, Link then again goes to the castle to see Aghanim break the seal of the 7 sages. Link then chases him down and kills him. But that's a little too easy, right? You know, it's a little bit too easy. So basically, as Aghanim dies, he draws Link into the Dark World at the Pyramid of Power. So the Dark World was what the Golden Land used to be before Ganon ruined it, pretty much. And the Hyrule Castle is now the gate of the Dark World and is allowing evil to go into the Light World. Link then has to get the Golden Power, Triforce, and the 7 mages who can help Link. And he finds the maidens, and they each tell him different things and interesting things about him. Like one of them even mentions how he's the legendary hero and one of the descendants of the Knights of Hyrule, who's to defeat Ganon. Zelda's the last maiden, who tells Link that Ganon is hiding inside the Tower of Death Mountain. The 7 maidens then use the power to take down the barrier surrounding the tower. Link has this battle with Ganon, who is actually Aghanim as well. And then once Link defeats Ganon, he restores what he caused, like damage-wise, and brings back to life who of his allies were killed. And yeah, like honestly, this game when it came out, it was a well-made game, and I think it was ahead of its time as well. It had really good design. There was a lot more items compared to the other games prior. So the Legend of Zelda 2 and number 1, the OG one, and also it overall had a lot of weapons and best soundtrack I think of most of the Zelda games. Like it's I don't know if you guys have played it, but it's pretty catchy. Even so, like it has a lot of like accolades along with it. In terms of sales, it's sold about like one.
Question.
What's up?
Is this? I don't know if you guys don't know the answer, but is this the game? You know how in Smash Bros. Brawl, like in the vault, you could play older Nintendo games. This
No,
one
that-
game
I thought that was just the Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, that one's just Legend of Zelda.
Okay.
Like the OG first Zelda. I think the Brawl one had the original, and then they also had like a 5-minute time trial of Ocarina as well.
Okay. And this one is Link to the Past?
Yeah, the one that Sin was talking about is Link to the Past.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
basically it had more than 5 consecutive years and number 1 spots of sales. Worldwide is one of the best selling SNES games. It sold over 4.61 million units as of 2004. And yeah, even they later re-released it as the Game Boy Advance version. Yeah, and it was also paired with 4 Swords, which I talked about earlier.
Nice. Yeah,
So-
definitely deserves to be up there.
Have you guys played it before, or?
No.
I-
I played almost everything on this entire list except for your 2 picks. And StarCraft.
Yeah.
Well, good news. It is
No.
now available on the Switch as a virtual console game.
Ooh.
Yeah.
My storage is really bad.
Now, Cynic, I'm not trying to knock your game, but you don't have trains, do you?
Link isn't a conductor.
That's
See,
all I'm saying.
see, Kalichi, this is the
That's all I'm
prequel,
saying.
man.
Link didn't
This-
go to university.
This is the prequel,
That's all I'm
Kalichi. You can't do him like that. It's before he became the train conductor,
Yeah,
man.
but my game had a map in Smash.
Well, was it a linear game or was it an open world game?
Open world to an extent.
Oh, so it's linear. Okay,
Is it
thanks.
most-
Thanks for answering my question, Kalichi.
Isn't most Zelda games open world?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Spirit Tracks is a bit different. It's complicated.
You can't go everywhere. You can go where the tracks take you.
That sounds pretty
So it's-
linear to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Literally.
I mean, you don't have to. You can go if there's like a left and a right. You can go left or right. You just can't go straight.
You can't just
I mean,
take a
if you have
U-turn
2
and go
options,
back.
you can make one of the 2 options, you know.
I mean, you eventually have to go back and make the right choice, but you could just go down that way.
Oh man. Alrighty.
Burger King foot lettuce.
Oh gosh. So, number 5, Twilight Princess. Released in 2006 for the Nintendo GameCube and for the Wii, Twilight Princess has got to be one of the darker visualizations of the hero of time. This was also the game to have a rating of T for teens and for good measure. Twilight's darker interpretation created a sense of maturity that we had not seen in previous installments, and by maturity I mean intended for a mature gaming audience. There's been darker Zelda games as far as story time in previous releases, but as far as visualizations go, it definitely held up to its name. Mainly, this was due to the violence and blood as seen from Ganon, and yeah, it just, it kind of brought that whole thing back with the whole Skyward Sword thing. It brought a new mechanic with the whole, Wii controllers, and I think some of the creatures was also really freaky, which kind of, it's not one of my favorite Zelda games, but I've played it all the way through. Sure, some of the, I know people have their opinions, but some of the wolf adventures were not really my favorite. Don't get me wrong.
Isn't that the only game where you turn into a wolf?
Yeah.
That's the only game you turn into a wolf, and I didn't mind it that much, but I don't know. Maybe some of our listeners agree that, or disagree. Doesn't matter. I didn't really enjoy the wolf mechanic that much. It was fun for a while, but then some of the dungeons were just so tedious, man. It just kept going. I loved the concept of Midna. That was another great addition to the game. It kind of plays into his whole fairy buddies and any kind of allies that he's had in the past. I just thought Midna was totally different, and the fact that we get transported into this world of the Twilight realm kind of adds a whole new dimension to the Zelda franchise. And I think the reason why it deserves to be on this list is just the fact that it was a whole new direction as far as console wise. Obviously you had Skyward Sword for the Wii, but looking back at Twilight Princess, I feel like it brought in a whole new audience, because beforehand, I'm not saying most of the games weren't dark, but I guess for the older generation, this kind of allowed them to be, oh shoot, this is dark. There's some, there's a lot of, kind of underlying foreboding kind of moments. And just looking at it, it just kind of weighs. It's like a heavy-hearted visualization, and I think one of my favorite parts actually had to be the forest, the one where you're chasing that skull kid, and
I love that.
That was one of my favorite parts of the game. But
you know what was my favorite part? It was I don't know if it's technically a temple. It's like the cabin of those Yetis, and the wife keeps sending you to get stuff, but then it's meaningless, and then at the very end she turns out to be the boss.
Yes.
Sick.
Oh my gosh, that was one of my favorite missions, man. I forgot about that one. Yeah, but see, that's why it makes it, I feel like Twilight's pretty good. It's got that kind of, something's wrong. I had a feeling halfway in that mission, it doesn't feel right. Why am I doing this? And then obviously it's well, yep, called it. That's it. So yeah, overall, Twilight Princess, I think, just lands itself as one of the most stapled Zelda games, and it's definitely one of those titles that people recognize. When you say Zelda, 80% of the time they're gonna say, oh yeah, Twilight Princess and stuff like that. So yeah. Number 4, Majora's Mask. Released in 2000 on the Nintendo 64, Majora's Mask was the first to introduce an interesting concept to the franchise, that being the time system that spans 3 days, and on purposely having to restart progress in order to progress the game further. This is also the game that the evil Lord Ganon plays no part whatsoever as the main villain, which I thought was really funny, as well as Zelda, who only makes her appearance in one scene in a flashback, kind of connecting with Ocarina of Time. This game, as many fans already know, is the sequel to Ocarina of Time and takes place in the land of Termina, where an interesting little fella named Skull Kid becomes the world's greatest threat, stealing the Majora's Mask off of the definitely not creepy at all Happy Mask salesman, and begins the ruin of the world. Child Link, learning of the Skull Kid's true motives, ends up going after him, and that being the how do I say this? Destruction of crashing a freaking moon into the ground, destroying all life as we know it. And it's up to this little dude, Link, to save Hyrule once again. Kind of a really tragic. This kid just saved the universe, and now he has to save a moon from crashing into. This man gets no breaks.
Dude, if you
That's
check out our
cool.
latest episode of the guest table, I said that probably one of my favorite stories in a game, Majora's Mask. It's so dark and
It is.
and just so nice. The villain just wants to crash a moon into the planet. He's basically if Gru and Ultron became one guy.
Yeah, but did he drive a train?
Oh no.
I bet you Skull Kid could drive a train.
Not.
Yeah.
No. No.
Guys,
Yeah,
we don't know.
Degree.
Hold on a second. We don't know his qualifications. For all we know, look,
Exactly.
this man's Skull Kid probably. We're talking about Skull Kid, right? This man probably had a past between Ocarina of Time and Majora's. Who knows? Maybe he picked up a few things driving a train around. You know what I'm saying?
His name is Skull Kid. Kid. He's a child.
So is Link, dude.
So is Toon Link.
Yeah, but this Toon Link had a degree.
Where's his
Nobody's
degree
doing.
though?
You can't just get up and drive on your own train. You gotta learn.
I feel like every segment we're gonna have is that we have to distinguish if he's train drive worthyable. But
See,
yeah,
mine is the
show me.
only story. A Link to the Past is the only story that's approved that train timeline because it's a prequel. It happens before he gets the degree to be an engineer to drive a train.
Link in Skyward Sword rides a giant bird.
Yeah.
Is that train, Daniel? I don't think
Is that
so.
a train?
it's
pilot.
No, it is not.
You don't need a degree
It's a
in
big red
engineering
bird, I
to
don't
drive
know.
a bird, Daniel.
So,
a
anyone, anyone,
Pilot. He's got his
Animal.
pilot license. He's got his pilot license.
Kind of, that's a
anyone
complaint
can
to
become an
me. I
animal,
don't think
but not
you need a
everyone can
pilot.
drive a train.
Okay, we get it, boys. We'll hash this out later. But yeah, the game brought a cool concept in the use of masks as items, transforming and granting Link into various beings that assisted you on your journey to save the day. Its story, like Daniel said, ultimately is like one of the most creepiest Zelda games in the entire being of its franchise, and earned its spot on our list because of that. The Happy Mask Salesman, some of the NPCs and their kind of, a depressing monologue, not to mention the constant looming darkness that shadowed you wherever you go, and the burden of Termina's survival basically on this child's shoulder. This also being one of the most challenging Zelda games, I find, as you can't just take your time through the dungeons anymore. Every action affects how much time you have left before you ultimately succeed, or have to play the Song of Time to reset yourself back to the first day. Overall, Majora's Mask is one of the coolest games in the franchise, with a great visualization and change of pace in the games that hadn't come out previously. Its dark and sinister atmosphere plays with our imaginations, putting the pressure on to the completeness of the game and, saving the land of Termina. So yeah,
I'd have been scared with the train.
Nice on.
bro, enough of these trains.
Hey, do you guys want to hear me make an entire internet's worth of people mad?
Yes.
Number 3, Breath of the Wild.
Let's
you
go.
may be wondering
Yes.
why this isn't number 1, and quite frankly, so are we.
This is probably the Zelda game I want to play the most. Breath of the Wild.
Okay, well, let's get into why it isn't even number 2. So, Breath of the Wild kind of took everyone by storm. It was released in 2017 on the Wii U and Switch, although if you really want the good experience, you're going to play the Switch because it cuts down on issues like lag, because it has to spawn in an entire open world that Link can traverse on. And that's one of the big sells really of the game. If you could see it, you could get there basically, aside from, some of the impassable gorges at the outer limits of the massive map. You could climb mountains, you could chop trees, and you could really exploit the game. Right, so
After
one of the
speedrun.
big things in this game is that it's become huge with speedrunners. I think Kenny said, actually just now, in between the part where the recording cut out, is that 24 minutes is what the current world record is. which is so great. It's not like, you know, super
Crazy, man.
crazy, but as soon as you finish the Great Plateau, which is the tutorial basically, you go straight to Hyrule Castle, you can fight Ganon, and you can beat the game. So another benefit I think to this game is that when I mentioned Skyward Sword before, I neglected to mention that it had a really good dynamic between Zelda and Link, which in my opinion is one of the most important things in a Zelda game. It's like, they don't have to be romantic, but if they have a good, like, chemistry between the two, yeah, even as friends or whatever, it makes it, like, a fuller experience. In this game, a big part of the story is that Link is trying to recover his lost memories, where you can see him going from being just her simple knight guard to becoming more of a friend, to possibly romantic if you squint at it later. I don't know. That's up for shippers to figure out, but you also learn a lot about the other champions who are members of the other races, the Rito, the Zoras, and the Gorons. They have giant mechs, basically, that if you go and you help their spirits out, that they will blast Ganon in the final fight and take, I think, a half of his health bar if you save all of them. So yeah, I think it's a really good game. Again, I don't know when it cut out, but classical fans are going to be kind of, I don't know, thrown off. There's no key items, really. You can get the Master Sword and the Highland Shield. They're not required. Basically nothing in the game is required apart from the first 4 shrines. So, I don't know, I felt like it deviated a bit too far to become the best Zelda game of all time, but it did really, really well, and the open world concept is really cool, so it was no surprise when they decided to do Breath of the Wild 2. One last thing I'm gonna cover right before we move on. This game is at the very end of all of the branches of the Zelda timeline, somehow. I don't know how that works.
Because Ganon is too strong, that's why.
But how does
He's
this
a
timeline
menace.
how does it split, but all of them circle back to one game?
Yeah. It's
That's
complicated.
That's a little confusing. That's one of the reasons why I haven't gone into Zelda. Timeline's too confusing.
Timelines are crazy, yeah.
You don't really need to know the timeline to like enjoy the game. Like if you're
Yeah.
gonna play like, I don't know, Phantom Hourglass, you the only thing you need to know is that Wind Waker came right before it. Spirit Tracks comes like I think 100 years after it. That's it. You don't need to know any of the other games.
Yeah. Also, I feel like each of its, however the, timelines may be confusing. I mean, once you kind of get a good grasp of it, it's, like, I'm not gonna lie, it is confusing, but like, if you really look into it, it's, and kind of like study it and get a good grasp, it does make sense after a while. But obviously with Breath of the Wild, as Daniel said, it kind of, it's like, it is at the bottom, but it's like, why is it at the bottom? How did this happen? You know?
Yeah,
It should be on one. It should be on one side of the timeline.
It really should, and with the addition of the Koroks in the game, I'd probably put it in the Toon timeline, honestly. But I don't know. There's also so many things that came out with DLC. Like you could have Wolf Link in the game. You could have a motorcycle in the game. Majora's Mask is in the game. So like,
Bro, it's becoming like the like Hyrule Warriors kind of thing, where it's just all of them in one universe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you guys ready for me to make you mad because this one beat out Breath of the Wild number 2, Wind Waker. So Wind Waker is my personal favorite Legend of Zelda game.
Okay.
Oh, did you hear my mic fall? There we go, that's better.
Nice.
So, Wind Waker is kind of the start to the whole Toon art style, which you saw in Phantom Hourglass, you saw in Spirit Tracks, I think Minish Cap, Four Swords. So if you are a fan of that aesthetic, then this is kind of, I think, the big one that, was like, hey, we don't need to make Link look hyper realistic. I mean, like, it's not like the graphics were good enough to do that yet, but we don't have to try for that. So Wind Waker came out 2003 on the GameCube. It sold well. I think a lot of people liked it. They had some issues with it that were solved later when it was remade in HD for the Wii U. So if you want to pick up this game and play it for yourself, I highly recommend you get Wind Waker HD. It adds a fast sail, which makes you obviously faster when you're out sailing, but it also negates you having to change the wind direction. You could just basically sail in whatever direction you want without penalty. It also looks way better.
Yeah, it does look really good.
Yeah, it's actually like, I know it's like a simplistic art style, but it's beautiful in HD. So like, I highly recommend. Another big thing that I said before, the dynamic between Link and Zelda, it's got to be there for me for a Zelda game. And in this one, you don't know it. Okay, you could guess it's Zelda from the start, but Tetra is a very good rendition of Zelda. She plays really well with Link. She kicks Ganon in the face one time. I felt like that was pretty cool.
That was legendary.
Her whole band of
one
pirates
kick.
are funny and quirky. I'd say one big knock that prevents this from being number one. If you've played the game, I think you know it drags near the end after you deposit Zelda in the submerged Hyrule. You have to go out and you have to collect, I think, 7 shards of the Triforce, and you have to bring the sages to 2 temples. So you could do the temples and they're fine. They're escort missions essentially, so people don't love that. But collecting the pieces of the Triforce is really tedious, and I would recommend leaving all the side quests to that portion of the game, because you could take a break from searching for Triforce shards. You could take a picture of the moon for the emo kid. You know, you could go stop the bully children. You know, so yeah, I don't think it's a big knock considering it's an open world experience. Not as big as Breath of the Wild, but it was serviceable for the GameCube. I think that I would recommend this over a lot of the previous Zelda games, just because it's my personal pick. So you know what? Why don't you guys just listen to me? Don't even think about number one unless you're like literally wanting to play the best Zelda game ever, and go and play Wind Waker.
It doesn't have a train.
This guy.
Hey man,
Hey, this Link paved the way for Train Link. Okay.
Okay.
No,
let
I
me tell
allow
you-
that. You know, fair enough.
let me tell you. Let's
So
just
he
say
sold
that.
his boat so he can go to school.
Let's just say Wind Waker, Link can sail a boat. I don't know if Train Link can sail a boat.
Any? I don't.
I'm pretty sure he can.
What? Where's his sailing
I mean-
license?
Sailing a boat is much easier, you know, than driving a train.
No, I
Nah,
don't think
man,
so.
you gotta change the directions. The sea is
The
open.
train, you can only really go one direction.
Agree.
What?
Yep.
What? You can go left and right. If those tracks.
Derailment
There's
is an
dragons.
opportunity.
So it's sinking.
Yeah, but you got life jackets. That's like, that's a hack.
All right. So the moment we've all been waiting for, our number one on this top 10 Zelda games of all time is, surprise, surprise, Ocarina of Time. Released in 1998 on the Nintendo 64, Ocarina of Time has been known to be one of Nintendo's greatest masterpieces. Fight me on it. Revolutionizing and paving the way not only for the future of Zelda installments, but for the gaming world in its entirety. Immersing the player in the wide open spaces of Hyrule Fields and creating a whole new dynamic and atmosphere, creating a true sense of adventure with the player. In this game, you wake up as young Link in Kokiri Forest, who has been summoned by the Great Deku Tree by your fairy companion Navi. Plagued by the nightmares he had been having, the Deku Tree sends him on a mission to test Link's courage to cure the curse set upon him by Ganon. It is here that young Link's journey truly begins, as his efforts, however heroic, were no use as the Deku Tree's fate had been sealed before he knew it. Bestowing upon Link the spiritual stone of the forest, with his last breath, directs him to meet with the princess at Hyrule Castle. Eventually, Zelda and Link meet, and most of the adventures are fun dungeons and exploring the world as young innocent Link. It is until the nightmares had come to pass and Ganon took over the land, following the naive Link, entrusting that his childish ambitions would help him get the keys he would need to cross over to the Sacred Realm. Sorry, I almost messed up on saying that.
Saying Sacred Realm.
I know, no! It is here that Link is forced to take the burden of adulthood and begins the true journey of correcting the misdeeds of the great and powerful Ganon by collecting the sages to seal him away for good. There's a lot more to this story, but I feel like that's another topic for another episode. We could talk about the stories of these games for ever, but I'm just gonna continue on. All in all, we believe Ocarina deserves to be at the top for two main reasons. At least I do. As mentioned before, its mechanics and what it brought to the world of gaming was incredible. At the time, it being on Nintendo 64, I feel like the two games that kind of competed in that same sort of concept was Ocarina of Time and Mario 64. Both had kind of that RPG open world kind of thing, but I feel like just for the sake of storyline, in my opinion, I love both games, but Zelda Ocarina of Time just took the cake on that one. You know, a vast open world to travel as you please, and not to mention all the cool new weapons and items like the Ocarina, and establishing a thing we haven't seen in the past from Zelda games, like a musical element, which kind of speaks to me personally. When I play this game, I get super immersed in it, and it's honestly, which I'm going to talk about soon, the story as well. It brings all that we've talked about in this Zelda top 10 all in one. The relationship between Zelda and Link, the darkness, the storyline, the tragedy, it really makes you feel a part of the adventure all the way through, and it really brings out an emotional side, I feel, when you're playing it. I mean, at least I really get immersed. That's why it was one of the first Zelda games that I actually completed, and I think I've replayed that game just probably more than 10 times, just the fact that I just love the story. The other reasons, Ocarina of Time has one of the most, beautiful underlying messages and stories in the entire franchise, I find. As children playing this game, we wouldn't think twice about it, but looking back on it, its plot connects with the inner child within all of us. In short, as children, we grew up living with no cares or heavy responsibilities. Life is so innocent and peaceful. Just like young Link, we play through half of the game. Everything's although we go through some dungeons, it's still all fun and rainbows, and Link doesn't have a true burden on his shoulders quite yet. I mean, things have happened, but as children, as we do in our real lives, we don't have cares in the world, and I mean that in a good way. There was no burden on us. But as Link grows up and all these things start happening to him, we grew up with a sense of adventure and wonder for, what the world may hold. However, at some point, unfortunately for Link, his responsibilities come earlier than he had thought, and his adulthood has to come sooner. And basically responsibility and, love, depression, excitement, it's just love, it's all, sorry, I probably said that again. Anyways, you know what I mean. It's just such a well-rounded story, and I feel like it connects to the real world so much. I'm not saying that Hyrule is real, I'm just saying the underlying story just connects with reality. It's at a certain point we all grow up, and we'll always be the inner child within us all. We'll always be children inside, but we also grow to have these responsibilities and realize, life has its ups and downs, and we have to face them head on. And that's what I think connected me the most with this game. So that is why I believe it deserves number 1 on the top 10. I don't know. You guys let us.
You can make a podcast and just stay man children forever.
Yeah,
that's a choice.
Exactly. I mean, in my opinion,
that's a great choice. In my opinion.
I think that really shows your, manlyhood and adulthood making a podcast like us. So, other than that, fight us on that topic. Let us know in the comments. But yeah, no, I think. Yeah, exactly. Let us know in the comments what Zelda games you guys thought should have deserved to be on the top 10, or if you agree with any of us, or your personal connections with the game.
I just want to
boys.
I want to make a quick note. I think the main reason why Breath of the Wild didn't get first place is because it didn't have a train in such an open world, you know.
For
map.
being safe.
Oh my gosh.
If
It
it
had a
had a
chainsaw.
train, if it had a train to move around the map easily, come on, easy number one.
Spirit Tracks
Easy
got
number one.
9th.
Boys, I'm saying since
And if Spirit Tracks had more trains, it'd be number 1, Daniel.
You're right. 9 out of 10 needed more trains.
bro,
Not
since
enough trains.
since number 9 on this list, we have not stopped talking about trains.
So let us know in the comments what your favorite train is. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
It's like, steampunk locomotive, but anyways, thank you all so much for tuning in again for the 3rd episode of the Lunch Table Podcast. We had a really great time recording this episode today, guys, and again, let us know what you think in the comments, what Zelda game you think should have deserved to be on the top 10, or if you agree with us, and your personal connections with the game. Anything, really, just talk with us, so... Not done and desperate at all. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. See you next time, Lunchmates.